Okay, it's 1 o'clock now, but I want to definitely wait for Barry. Oh, there's Barry. Hey, Barry.
Hey, Julie.
Should we give it a minute or two to see if anybody else hops on?
You know what? Let's get started. It's being recorded,
Okay.
so everyone's busy. Let's
Okay.
roll.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Go ahead, Barry. You want to get us started?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is just really a follow-up to our previous meetings, and with the new guidelines and rules set to officially take place tomorrow, we just wanted to give everyone an opportunity, I guess, if they had any additional questions or concerns or comments, to sort of have a forum to do so. Julie, was there anything before we open it up to Q&A? Was there anything that you wanted to address specifically?
Well, we had talked about something that was brought up, I believe, when we did that joint Zoom call on the 14th of August. And it had to do with whether or not if a listing agent is also if a listing agent has a listing and then a unrepresented buyer comes in, and there was some question about whether the listing agent can charge the seller, or if the seller can agree to pay anything for that unrepresented buyer, should the listing agent assist them. And it turns out that is allowed, and I do have like a little couple paragraphs about it, which I'm not going to read right now, but what I might do is just email this to everybody later. But it does basically say that there is a allowance for that in there. So I'll just send this out to everybody later, so I don't have to read the whole thing.
And if I remember correctly, where we kind of left that was if you put it in as a clause and other provisions, should the buyer happen to be an unrepresented party, then the brokerage fee charge at settlement would be X amount, something to that effect. I think that's kind of where if I remember correctly, that's kind of where we left it.
Yeah, I believe I think that's what it is, but there seemed to be some misunderstanding or some, I think that what we had talked about that day was that it looked like there was nothing allowed for that circumstance, but it turns out
there is.
Yeah.
Okay. Good deal. Good deal. All right. Well, we've got a few folks on here, so I guess if you guys want to just raise your hand, and we can try to, if anyone has any questions or, like I said, any comments, or we just want to go ahead.
Ray?
Yes.
I see your hands raised.
Let's review this from the perspective of the listing agent. I have a listing live right now, and if somebody comes to me tomorrow and wants to see the property, I guess I have to say you need to shoot over an email of your buyer's representation agreement before I can show it. Is that correct?
No, I mean, it's, if Rain does what they say they're going to do, there will be no mention of the SBC on Rain. But what buyer's agents, what we're telling our agents to do, we do have that letter of compensation form. So what they could do is they could reach out to the listing agent to see if the seller is open to paying any commission, but they may not show their hand. So it may be something where they just say, well, submit it with the offer, and then at that point you'll submit the letter of compensation. The buyer's agent would submit a letter of compensation form along with the purchase agreement, and then that'll just be considered.
Yeah, you're assuming that that's an offer. I'm just saying, somebody wants to come and look at one of my listings tomorrow. The way I understand it is I'm not supposed to let them in the door with an agent unless they show me a piece of paper. Otherwise, that's a stranger coming with the buyer.
Yeah, I think he's talking about the buyer broker. Barry.
Okay. Oh,
So-
yeah. I mean, from a listing agent perspective,
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, again, the due diligence is kind of like the EMD, the way I see it. The EMD isn't the listing agent's responsibility unless it's for some reason being held by the listing firm. Just like the buyer broker being, I mean, you're just that's their liability and responsibility. So I don't think you need to, say, hey, well, I need to see a copy of your buyer representation agreement. I don't think that's a road we necessarily want to go down.
Okay, because
but
I
if
was
they're not,
misunderstanding.
oh, I'm sorry. But if they're not represented by anybody and Ray wants to show that maybe they want, they're going to be unrepresented, wouldn't Ray need a buyer broker?
Well, yeah, I think the example, and I know we're confusing everyone here, but the example Ray was given was it was an agent, so you're just
Yeah.
assuming. So I'm saying if it's an agent reaching out to you, I don't ask them for a copy of their
Oh.
buyer representation agreement. However, if it's if it's a buyer and you have same rules applied as previously, hey, do you have representation? And if they don't have representation, then you have the option of they can, again, you just got to make sure you're very clear. They can remain an unrepresented party, in which case you give zero, you're just a facilitator, you give zero advice to, or you could choose to be a dual agent, and in which case you could either, again, as long as you know what a dual agent is, you could be the dual agent, or we could have a designated agent, if you will, under the Swell Realty or Swell Real Estate umbrella to serve as the buyer's agent in that case.
Okay, part two. The agent calls me tomorrow, says, "Hey, I would like to look at your property. How much are you guys paying?" And I say, "Well, one option I could say is, I'm not telling you, just make an offer." That's one option. Option two, I could say, well, my owner has said that they're going to pay 3% if it's full price. If it's less than full price, it's going to be less than that. Just see what you got. What about those two scenarios?
Yeah, again, I think it goes into the overall strategy of the agent and the seller, and also of the property, because some properties are easier to move than others. Some properties you may get into a multiple offer situation. Other properties, we've seen them sitting on the market a lot longer than they used to. So I think it really depends. Again, I think for us to, as long as you know what the guidelines are, you stay within them. But I think for us to say, hey, blanket statement, don't ever show your hand. I get it. That could be one option. But if if your house has been on the market for 3 or 4 weeks, I don't know that's necessarily the best option. So again, I think agents need to just make sure that you take every situation, every listing, every buyer sort of differently, and make the and listen, you may have to pivot too. Maybe you start off saying, as a listing agent, I'm not, you just, the seller may be open. We're not really sure. It kind of depends on how good the offer is, or, however you want to phrase it. But again, if you get 3, 4 weeks into it, you're getting no activity or limited activity, you may want to be a little bit more forthcoming.
Correct.
Barry, I would also add to that, that's a conversation that you need to have with your seller. In my opinion, that's the conversation.
Absolutely. Tom, that's a tremendous point. And I'm sorry I'm interrupting you, but it was in the back of my head. I forgot it. I'm glad you brought it. But that, above all else, you gotta, and guys, we should have been doing this anyway. Okay. But you got to sit down with your seller, make sure they understand fully what your strategy is going to be, and make sure they know, okay, scenario 1, scenario 2, scenario 3, if there is one. But yeah, Tom, that's an excellent point.
Yeah, just make sure you have that conversation. Listen, this is the deal. We can do this a couple different ways. If you'd like, and what I would caution folks in doing it is just blurting out there 3%, whatever, because first thing, you don't know what that buyer and that buyer's agent have worked out ahead of time. Okay, first off. So that's not even our concern at this point. And the other thing is that you don't want to, like, kind of touch on what you said, Barry. You don't want to necessarily show your hand either, because listen, your seller will be more inclined to maybe pay maybe what would be considered old scale. If the offer is a great offer, right? Whereas if it's not such a great offer and they're asking for additional seller concessions, well, that's going to change. That changes the net. So I would just be talking to my sellers about net and about let's take them as they come. And I would tell the buyer's agent, hey, listen, the baseline of what I would find out is, Mr. Seller, are you willing to pay some sort of seller concession, including buyer agent compensation if requested? At least know that. And then from there, you have a baseline to go from there, and then at least be able to tell the other side maybe something like, well, it depends on the offer. We'll just have to see what you got. But yeah, come over and show the property, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, and you're going to run into situations where and y'all know this, some sellers are way easier to deal with than others. And generally those sellers tend to be the ones that sell their houses quicker. It's that way, right? For whatever reason. Right.
So I want to,
yeah, go ahead, Julie.
Well, I wasn't trying to cut anybody off, but we have a question on here on messages that Darren offered. So if I can move on to that one. And he says, what happens if my buyer is interested in a FSBO? Can I ask the FSBO seller if they're giving any seller concessions like I normally would with a RAIN listing? That's a good question.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of what we just talked about before. If it is a FSBO, the seller, hopefully they'll be somewhat open with you. But again, it may be, again, if they tell you like they're absolutely not offering any compensation, then that's a discussion again that you need to have. You should have already had kind of with your buyer anyway to have a feel, right? But yeah, but those are, and that's why I don't know, we keep using the word fluid, but there's so many different avenues where these situations go. Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
I think Barry, what you said a few minutes ago is that every seller is going to be different. We have to be, first of all, they need to understand or agree that we need to do what they want, obviously.
Yep.
But, advising them based on their individual circumstances is, I think, the wisest way to go.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to a lot of for sale by owners, and the good thing about that is they're going to be more likely to have a figure in mind. Because that I hear it over and over again. Well, I really am not looking for a listing, but we'll pay you 2% if you bring me a buyer's agent. So they're always volunteering compensation. So I don't think you're going to have too much of a problem with that scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anybody else? Raise your hands. Let's see everybody here.
Hillary.
Julie, I have a question.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So the letter of compensation form.
Yes.
Okay.
Are we sending that over before we go to see, or that is with the offer? I guess my question is, because we can't see, well, I haven't looked at the forms. Tom said they came out this morning. I haven't even been at my computer to do that yet today, but are we still going to have a place in the SPA at the end that says like us asking for our percentage or compensation? Is that still going to be in there, or is this taking the place of that? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Barry, you want me to jump
sure.
in? Yeah. As we've been saying all these weeks, that everything's this is all such a fluid situation. Things have been changing, rapidly. So what we were told originally is that there was not going to be any mention of it in a purchase agreement or in a listing agreement. But that's actually not what ended up happening. There is a place in the purchase agreement to put that now. However, it's also my understanding that when you send the offer over, that the letter of compensation should go with it. Although I've been told that it needs to not be just lumped in the same PDF file as the offer. It can be in the same email, but it needs to be a separate PDF file. And so you really you're really better off doing both, but put it in the purchase agreement and also the letter of compensation.
Mhm.
Okay, because I did see that they had taken our other letter of compensation and then they tried to, and then it went away again. And I'm like, help me, Jesus.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know.
Right.
It's been a nonstop, moving train, so to speak.
Right. So I have a good example of kind of everything that we're all talking about right now. Was I called yesterday on a house. My clients that I have right now we already all decided that we would go see whatever house was right for them because they're in kind of a low price range
Mhm.
and there's not a lot out there. But I told them I would call to see compensation and then we would come up with a game plan of how I was going to get paid and whatever. So
Mhm.
I sent a text to the lady because it said 0 in the MLS, which a lot of them do now because everybody took it out thinking they weren't allowed to have it and
Yeah.
whatever. And so she said, no, they're not offering compensation. So I'm like, okay, well, we're going to see it. We'll figure it out when we get there. It's below price because I bought a house on the same street last year for clients for 50,000 more. So the price is really low. I'm not sure what's going on with that, but I can see where I can build it in. So that's what I was asking that about. So I can ask for their closing cost in the place that we normally do. And then there is going to be that part to write in what I'm going to do. And then they can decide whether or not they like our offer. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
That's
how
my
I felt like it was
understanding.
going.
Yeah. Barry, you agree? I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
the way, that's what I
Yeah.
understand.
No, I think it's a good point, though. You got to make sure that the letter of compensation is in a separate PDF when it is submitted, just for transparency purposes.
Okay.
What blows me away is when I saw that this morning, I'm like, wait a minute. Now we're like, okay, it's not going to be on any of the rain forms. We got to keep it outside. Now there it is. And I'm just like going, okay, I get it. It's not being advertised on the MLS out to, the whole
Right.
community. But to me, I was just a little surprised when I saw that.
Yeah, we were all.
Anyways.
This is Melanie McHugh. Can you elaborate on what you're saying you saw? Was there something on rain that I missed this morning since I haven't been able to get to my emails yet today that you said you saw today?
In the purchase agreement, there is a place where you can put in the request for brokerage, buyer brokerage
okay.
compensation. Yeah.
I had mentioned that last week because I had
Yeah.
confirmed with Rain that they were not getting rid of that. They really had just added that extra verbiage at the top that everything was negotiable, nothing was set by Rain. So I guess my question is, since Rain did get rid of the offer of compensation form, I know we have the one that we're using internally. Is there really any reason that we have to do that if it's in the purchase agreement and that's going to all parties as far as title or attorneys on each side and they can see who's paying who and what?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I don't
is.
know. They keep changing. I don't know. I'd like for us to start out with it and then let's see how it goes because we did the same thing with they
CA.
made a big deal about the compensation agreement.
Yep.
We were like one of the only brokerages that tried to do what they told us to do, and then it ended up being more hassle for our agents. But I would say I still think it's a good idea. I know it's in the SPA. I get it, but I think it's a good idea if it's in a separate doc. It can hurt. Again, it's boom. That's probably the first thing that the agent is going to look at in the seller. And I say let's start out using it, and we'll if we need to make an adjustment, we will.
Yeah, I
Okay,
agree.
sounds good.
Yeah, because Melanie, we were told a few weeks ago that was absolutely required. Now it's like, is it? We're not sure. So I think what Barry said is what we should do. Let's just do it until we're
They're
told
just
we
gonna
don't
keep
need it.
us guessing and then we're
Yeah.
all gonna just, turn
Yeah.
to and figure it out, I guess.
Yes.
I have a question. This is Jason Goodwin.
Oh, hey, Jason.
Hey, we talked about it, but y'all never did have an answer for it. It's like I guess it's a loan question because some loans, like conventional loans, they're only required to give you 3%. So is that with the compensation total with the loan? Because that's going to be even more than 3% now. Total.
Can I answer that? Because I just had a long conversation this morning with my loan officer. Okay, so Jason, if you feel like you have room in the price of the house to offer them more in the price of the house, to get your compensation. Say the house is 200 and you're looking for 3%. So you're going to offer 206. You're going to get that 6%. It doesn't change the net for the seller. If you're asking for closing costs, then you ask for those. That's off the price of the house. My loan officer was so confused this morning, thinking she was going to need to get 6%. And she was like, there's no room in there for your commission. I'm like, that's not what I'm asking. I'm trying to make sure we're not above his buying power if I go in at a price. Does that make sense to you?
No, because the time you got.
Let me ask you this. Have you ever went to buy a house and they told you they wouldn't give you closing costs? So you told them, then fine, I'll offer you more for the house if you let my people, and then you give us closing costs, as long as it's in there for the appraisal. And then the listing agent needs to get that appraisal value to make everybody happy. Have you never done that?
Yes, I do it all the time. You
okay?
Right, but in this market, everything is priced high, almost almost at the appraisal limit. But things are changing now. But you might have room now. But in the past, everything was up to the limit already. There wasn't no room for no
But that's what 3%. I'm saying. Do not consider it a closing cost. Don't consider it that. You go in at the price, ask for what you want, and see what they have, because you're not going to be the only agent asking. Okay. And maybe your ask is less than somebody else's ask. They're going to be looking at their net sheet. If the listing agents, if we as listing agents are doing our job, we're looking at the net sheet. We don't care if they're asking for 2.5 or 3. We want to see the net value at the bottom of the page. And that's the offer we're taking.
Always.
Yeah. And Jason, I get what you're saying, Jason, that the, appraisal, yes, we always have to be concerned about the appraisal value, but I mean, it's really an individual thing. You just have to look at that particular house, and some, not all, some appraisers, if it's not a crazy number and they can make sense out of it, they may try to make it work. It's just going to be take one case at a time.
Yes, you are correct, but I was kind of asking about the 3%, like Naval Federal will only give for a conventional loan 3%, no matter what, to the buyer. You can't go over that. Is that include when the buyer give 3%? Is that in that part of the commission too? That's what I was asking, because that 3%.
If your buyer is paying your commission, yeah, it's going to be figured in with loan costs, I assume, on some level. But really, it's like Julie was saying, it's really at it depends on what the seller is willing to pay out. You start there, I guess, and then right? Does that sound?
Well, I think.
Go
ahead, Julie.
All I was trying to say was that if let's say you're trying to get 3% for your selling agent compensation, you go up on a $200,000 house, you're going to go 206, like
Hillary.
What she said, and then your 3% for closing costs, that's separate. That would be something that you could ask the seller to pay, and then you're not going over and above what the lender.
Right, and what I'm saying is that's coming out of the seller's net. So it's at that point it would be the seller decision on whether or not they want to get the home sold and pay that out of their net, as opposed to it being a loan cost or something tied to the buyer's loan. Does that make sense?
I understand. I mean, it's just like that 206 at first it's 200, and the house market is like at 200, and you ask for 206, and the appraisal back come back 204 or 202. It's just a pain in the butt now.
But here's the thing. Once that seller agrees to that and it happens and you've gone through all that process, do you really think they're going to not go through over $2,000 at that point? Like, if they decide on that, that's the listing agent advising them, like, I can get this, we can do it. And if I don't, you're still going to owe that amount. I mean, it's the same conversation we have when we do it to get closing costs included. This particular house I'm doing today, Jason, it is underpriced. So I'm like, did they underprice it to get it sold fast? And they figure everybody just needs to ask for what they want, because it's very underpriced. It's really weird. But moving forward, if sellers are not offering some kind of compensation, their houses are going to sell for less. I mean, that's what's going to happen. you know, right now prices are valued at us all having commissions paid in there. If somebody's not going to pay, the values of the houses are going to come down. So everybody's got to make a decision about what they're doing.
Okay, and anybody else?
Yes,
Go ahead.
Jim.
Go ahead, Jim.
Jim.
Yeah.
Okay. The question is about the concession field that they're adding. I think that's a horrible idea that they put that in there because that's probably going to be the next lawsuit because some agents are going to try to use that to indicate their willingness to pay compensation. So, like, we shouldn't tell everybody what concessions our seller is willing to pay. So would the recommendation be to put maybe yes, that they're willing, but then under the amount, put negotiable or offer or whatever?
Are you talking about on the listing side?
Yeah, it's like going to be a new field on MLS.
You can't put anything in there that's indicating a buyer
Oh.
brokerage compensation in the MLS. So
Yep.
a seller concession is remaining a seller concession. Am I right, guys? I mean, that's a separate animal from
Yeah,
buyer brokerage compensation.
that is true.
Because basically the attorneys that Catchmark attorneys, they're monitoring a lot of the MLSs, realtor and non-realtor across the country. And, you know, they said they're going to make an example out of brokerages and agents that are trying to bypass the regulations of the settlement. So like, you know, 'cause just like the commission, let the buyer request what they need and don't put your seller's cards out there unless, like Barry said, you know, if the listing's been sitting for 4 or 6 weeks, then maybe you would be more willing to indicate what they're going to offer. But
And I would get that in an email from your seller. I would make sure you have something that said that he's okay for you to trumpet whatever it is that he or she's willing to offer to the buyer side with anything, you know, because you want to make sure that you breadcrumb that.
I think I saw one of the videos, it said that you could fill that filled in or not, but if you did put it in there that you had to say what they were actually paying for. So if they're doing the HOA fees and they're doing, you know, so on and so forth, you would have to put that in there if you put an actual dollar figure in there.
Yes, I
But
believe
you
that's true.
can bypass, you know, not do it if you choose not to.
That is correct. As a matter of fact, it's in one of the Rain videos, the attorney that appears in that if you can put it's negotiable, you know, contact depending on the offer, and that's it. But if you put a dollar amount, you have to specify what it's for.
And I think that's partly why the seller concessions thing is getting a little muddy right now because, you know, we're saying we cannot put buyer's agent commission as anything seller concessions, but then we're kind of putting it out there like to our sellers. Are you willing to pay any kind of buyer's concessions, which our SBC is not that. Our commission is not in that category. So I feel like those things are a little bit contradictory.
I would just put an or between, are you willing to pay any seller concessions or a buyer brokerage compensation? I'd put a big OR when you have that conversation with your seller. I didn't mean to cut you off, Barry. Sorry.
No, I was going to say too, that was kind of my conversation with my loan officer this morning because she was trying to get the full 6% to cover. And I was like, no, it has nothing to do with the seller concessions. It's my commission. So even they're a little confused on how to, I don't know. It's a road for all of us to learn.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it is. It's muddied. The waters are definitely muddied. You just, I think the only thing that's really consistent is nothing mentioned on the MLS about
Yeah.
SBC.
Yeah.
That we know.
Barry, I have another one too for you. I think I'd seen with NAR's Q&A or frequently asked questions, it had said like it's against one of the standards of practice to like indicate that your seller's listing isn't going to sell if they don't offer either a buyer compensation or a competitive buyer compensation. Can you address that? Like we're trying to not get into like legal trouble with NAR.
Yeah, well, in our letter of compensation form, and Julie, you may have it in front of you, I do not, but we put language in there that specifically kind of covers us and addresses, I don't know, Julie, if you want to read those last two sections.
Yeah. Well, and I've sent this out to all of you, I believe last week. One of the things we added, there were two things we added most recently. One of them says the undersigned understands that the attached offer to purchase is contingent upon all parties' acceptance of the terms outlined in this letter of compensation. That's in the letter of compensation that you can, you know, which you would send separate PDF, but along with your offer. And then we added the language, all parties understand fully that broker commission / compensation is not set by law and are fully negotiable. Because that's the main thing we all have to understand, that we all have to make sure everybody understands, that our clients understand. So I believe our verbiage on here is pretty solid.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I was referring to like when you're doing a listing, like if you say that your listing may not sell or you may not get offers if you're not going to offer a compensation to the buyer's agent.
I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying now. Yeah, well, obviously it's all in how you say it. I mean, you're right. You don't want to say your house isn't going to sell unless you do this, but I think it was Tom that used the language a couple weeks ago that was like, you know, use the word incentivize. You know, do you want to, you know, it may very well incentivize buyers and
Their agents
to come and show your house. If you do offer something, of course, it's completely up to you and it's negotiable. But I mean, it's all in how you present it. Yeah. I mean, you can't do it like an ultimatum.
Yeah.
Don't do this.
That wouldn't be good. Exactly.
No. Yeah. Does that make sense?
But yeah, it's all in, and you can go back and look at some of those recordings, but it is in how you present it and how you say it. And it's a value proposition. It really is. And if, you know, again, you just have to make sure that you explain it in a way that it's like basically it could in theory increase your chances of it being shown and therefore selling it quicker and at a higher price. Because before all this craziness, I mean, all the data, there's a reason that FSBOs are a much smaller percentage than folks that use a real estate agent to sell their house. There just is.
Yeah.
So anyway.
And actually, I think working with a seller, I mean, in my opinion, if you're not explaining that incentivizing buyers and buyers agents to come, if you're not explaining, you know, that how important that could potentially be, I think you're doing a disservice actually to your seller. If you just leave that out of the conversation altogether. I mean, it's ultimately their choice. You make that very clear. But you know, we have, you know, those of us that have plenty of experience at this, obviously, the more people you have interested in the house, the better the chances are that you're going to sell it quickly and for top dollar. And
that's exactly why, Julie, I use that auction analogy. I said, look, do you want to, if you have an item on an auction block, do you want 3 people in the room or 3,000 people? Which one's going to get you? Which one's going to fetch you the highest price in the shortest amount of time?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jim, I was going to suggest the last meeting, Tom brought that up in his listing presentation, which I think it's a very smooth comparison, and it's non-combative. And it just, it just makes perfect sense.
Oh yeah, I'll go
Thanks,
back and
Joe.
watch those. I was in the middle of moving when he had his role play, so I'll go back and watch that one again.
Okay, was somebody else ready to jump in and ask a question?
Yeah, I think to that point, Julie and guys, you have to be, it's like I said on last week's Zoom, you have to be prepared to give an answer, and you need to sort of think ahead of time. If they ask me this, how am I going to answer this? If they ask me, and this is a season more than any other where you really need to be buttoned up and just, okay, well, why is it good for someone to use a real estate agent to sell their house? Or why is it good in theory for a buyer to have representation and show the home? So be prepared to give those answers, because as soon as you start, if there's dead air like there is on a radio, or a deer in the headlight looks, chances are it probably isn't going to go as good for you as it should. So I would really encourage you to, hey, role play with yourself in the mirror or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, because again, the more you do it, the more then you'll get into a groove, and you can take some from this person and this person, make it your own. But it's just like anything else. Agents, it's like blood in the water for sharks. Sellers and buyers can sense fear and uneasiness and not knowing the answers. So I would just strongly encourage you guys, be prepared. Okay.
That's so true.
Yeah, and lead off with that's a great question.
Yeah.
That's a great question. And we're going
Yeah.
to talk about that as soon as I get there to the house.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It-
Yep. And really, listen, if you really need to, like, and this was, I think, really stressed when Matt held that Zoom thing about a month ago, and it was about your value proposition. I mean, you have to know what it is you're bringing to the table, and you have to not just know it, you have to convey it with confidence, so that you don't get that deer in the headlights look, so definitely be prepared.
Yeah. Kind of like the look that me and Julie have right now. No, just kidding.
All right, Barry.
All right. I think if no one else has any other questions,
I do have a question, Barry.
okie
Go ahead,
doke.
Nadine.
I'm sorry. I came in a little late and I'm not sure if
All right.
anyone asked this question. I haven't signed any listing paperwork since the changes. And I look at the listing paperwork, and can the seller say to us, I'm going to be negotiable. I don't know what I'm willing to pay, if anything, for until, so we're only putting negotiable in their paperwork is that what we're supposed to do?
Yeah, I believe so. If that's what your seller wants to do, like, for instance, let's see what offers come in and see what they're asking for, and then we'll take it one offer at a time and make a decision. I
Yeah.
think that's absolutely valid.
Okay.
TBD, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
I have like a scenario question, kind of to what she just said. It made me start thinking. So even if they said, really the way the SPA is now, so really even if they said in their listing paperwork that they wanted to give 2.5, if an offer came in and all the numbers didn't add up, they could cross out that 2.5 that the agent puts in and put 2% and send it back over as a counter, right? Because
Or
we're
3%.
saying up until the time, what was that?
Or 3%, right? Like they could up it or down it.
Well, I'm saying the seller could be like, because we're saying it's negotiable up until the time we're ratified. We are negotiating this contract.
Right. That's right.
So even if they say, but then it goes to the counterpart of, if we have 3%, I had a piece of land the other day, because I'm out here in no man's land, come up the other day on the MLS, and of course the percentage is still on it. It said 4%. And I was like, I don't ever put 4% on my buyer broker agreement. So, but we can't do that, right? How are we kind of handling
You
that
can
if
put-
somebody is offering a little bit more when the time comes? I guess that's all going to go away and it won't really matter is really what it is because we're asking at the last minute anyways. So,
Well,
As
yeah,
far
but
as
you
I
still,
see, as offers being presented is no
last
different than
last week.
before, realistically.
right,
I mean,
right,
because
exactly.
everything
the
is still in there the same. They
final
just added that
Four classes.
we're
Did you
not
enter those
controlling
in
it,
for the
which we
green room?
never were before. Everybody should have
Just
known
under
that
too.
before.
Okay.
Hey, Steve, mute your phone there, bud. Yeah.
It is, yeah.
So
it
all
makes
of that
sense.
is going to be
Is
the
it weird?
same
Yeah, 'cause we
from the way
separated.
I can
Just want to
see
make
it.
sure. Okay, she did everything. She
Hey,
did the
Steve
transition. and she
Crawford,
did
can
the
you
core
mute
for
yourself,
both,
please?
for the whole thing. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Appreciate it. Just wanna make
Rachel,
sure.
are you anywhere? Are you there? Can you mute? There you go. Thank you. Awesome. Sorry about that. I'm sorry, Melanie, you want to go over that again?
I really just said that, all of this is a lot for all of us to take in, and I get that, but realistically, the offer looks exactly the same as it did. Now, everybody's right, it's fluid and it may change, but as of right now, how much we're asking for the seller to pay us is still in there as far as a percentage or a flat fee. And all of that can be negotiated back and forth between both agents as for, representation for the seller and the buyer. So realistically, that part of it's not going to change. I'm pretty sure the listing agreement still has on there what the seller's willing to pay as well. So you could put TBD on there, it's just not showing on the MLS.
Mm-hmm.
right, but
I don't think
think
Hillary got
I
her
think what-
question. I don't think Hillary got her question answered. Though
Yeah,
you mentioned something about 4%.
Right,
Yeah,
right. Like
Hillary,
like
I was-
somebody Nadine
Yeah.
said, but they could come back and even offer you more. Well, no, if I'm asking for 2.5, it's probably because 2.5 is what's on my buyer broker agreement. So that part is not negotiable during the SPA part of the whole offer.
Right, I get that.
Yeah.
But if you had a land listing, you would have probably made your percentage with your buyer 4%, if that's your
Not
typical.
not necessarily starting out because that's not the norm. It really
You
is.
should on land
Every
listings.
once in a while, somebody will do 4 or 5, but that's not the norm.
SBC is different on land, though. I would say it's generally more than 3. It should be more than
Yes.
generally. It's more than 3% on land
Really?
listings.
Right.
If you're
And
going
if we're
into a
moving-
land listing,
But sometimes I'm working with buyers that we're not looking for land to start out with,
Yeah,
and then that's
sure.
where we end up. So
Sure.
it's a little, yeah. But anyways, it's all good.
Yeah.
And I
You know,
guess-
what you may want to do then is do a brand new buyer rep agreement since it's land and not a house. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Oh, that's
Yep,
true.
yep,
Just
yep.
protect yourself, and because again,
Just
if
do
we
a
ever
change
get
up.
any of these breadcrumb audits that who knows could come, we
Right.
just want to make sure that we're as buttoned up as we can.
Right. I've had like every scenario run in my head lately, but anyway,
yeah.
that's
I hear
keeping me
you.
awake at
And I
night.
guess if, like Julie said the last time we met, if we're trying to protect ourselves and always get our money, we want to start at the percentage and what we hope to get paid, and then we can
Right.
negotiate down,
Yeah.
but not up. And that
Ex-
way, hopefully we're not getting, ourselves in a position.
Exactly.
Right, not leaving money on the table.
Barry, another
We should all
question.
put 5% on our buyer broker. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Let's do it.
Julie, I'm all for it. Let's go. Swell coming in hot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have another question, please.
Jim, this is your last question.
Sure, gotcha. Would it be best practice to get our buyer brokerage agreements like through DocuSign or Instanet versus doing it pen and paper at the home to verify that it has actually been signed on this date? Versus
So
so
what?
there's no discrepancy
I don't
as
think
to
it matters.
I think it's really at your discretion, at your buyer's discretion. I mean, whichever you feel more comfortable with, because you can the date can be validated either way. Probably more risky to do it with pen and paper, but again, that's at your discretion.
You know what I would do, Jim, is it just depends on the client. I mean, if you have a client that just is, just send me whatever I need to sign, I'll sign electronically, great. But then keep a few copies of it with you in your car.
Yeah, and I would say this also because DocuSign, folks, folks tend to not read those. So the only thing if you're doing it electronically, you just got to make sure that the other party knows what they've signed. So don't just, if you send it to them at 7:15 and they send it back to you at 7:17, you're going to need to talk to them. Okay. Because you have an executed buyer rep, but they don't know what the heck
they don't know what they signed. Yeah.
No. So again, we have to be proactive in protecting not just our clients, but ourselves. Okay. Because people are out here for whatever reason looking to see people get tripped up. So you guys you gotta do more heavy lifting than maybe what we've been doing previously, even though stuff is still basically the same. It's just more delineated, and it's more in the forefront of people's minds. So that's an example where I prefer to do everything via DocuSign, okay, or AuthentiSign. However, like I just said, you got to make sure that the person you're dealing with, that they have a full knowledge of whatever is in the document that you send. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good.
Point of verification on the buyer broker.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding is that is negotiable between the agent and the buyer up until time of ratification. Once it's ratified, that can't be changed.
The buyer broker?
Right.
I don't think that's the case, because let me give you a scenario here. If you do, let's say you put 3% on your buyer broker, and the seller is offering 2.5%, and you know that your buyer can't pay that other half, you can change, you can add language to your buyer broker stating that you've agreed to accept 2.5% on this particular transaction from your buyer.
Right.
You can put
prior,
it on
prior to ratification.
On paid, after ratification, but you're not changing the number 3. You're adding a note on page 4 of the buyer broker on other provisions.
Mm-hmm.
Write it out specifically there. And because you can negotiate with your buyer. You can negotiate down with your buyer.
Down. You can negotiate down. You just can't negotiate up.
You can't negotiate up with the seller once it's on your, and there's language in here in the buyer broker that says that, like, you can change that number for your buyer. You don't change the 3 that you've already put there, but you add language on page 4, and you can do that as long as everybody, your buyer signs it and you sign it. Okay.
But like I say, that needs to be done prior to ratification.
You can do it post.
Ratified.
I mean, if things change, I mean, again, if y'all are negotiating and it needs to be negotiated down, I mean, you could negotiate it down post ratification.
Yeah, because the buyer broker isn't part of the purchase contract. That's just between you and your buyer. So you can negotiate that, a change in your fee.
Yeah, and
with them after ratification.
Initial it and date it.
Yep.
Date it beside the initial.
And probably make it specific to that particular property, so you don't get
exactly.
you don't get held on that on the next one. Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
Good point.
Okay. All right.
Times.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
The last thing, I know we've all already done that before, and we've never amended it before. So, I mean, is that really necessary? I mean, we're taking less. Nobody's seeing that. They're just looking at the SPA for everybody's commission. I know I've taken commissions. I know everybody else has taken commissions less than what they ask on their buy broker of 3%. And we've never done that before. Is it really necessary? I mean,
yes, I think, like I said before, there's a whole lot of stuff we've never done before, and we don't know how intense of a a review,
Enforcement.
a purview, whatever the word you're going to use. So if we ever do get audited, I don't want us.
You just want it on there. I got
I
it.
don't want us
Now we're
scrambling
gonna,
with stuff.
and we're gonna get in trouble now for taking
exactly.
less and working with our clients.
Well,
Great.
but you know, where it's like, well, he told me that he was willing to take less, but you know, we don't have any. So again, put it, disclose,
Yeah,
put it in
yeah.
writing,
Okay.
initial it, date it, and make it specific to the property
Yeah.
that you're working on.
Okay, and just do it right on the last page.
Yeah,
Sure.
there's
We
a
don't
few
need to make
Other
an
lines.
provisions.
amendment or
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, other provisions.
I had a
No, I hear
question.
you. I hear you. Yeah.
That, go
I
ahead.
had a question. Talking about buyer side, my buyer can tell me, you know, I have no money to pay you. We need a house that the seller is giving us some concessions. What do you think is the right moment for me as an agent to ask to the other agent, hey, is gonna be any kind of compensation that before showing the house or after showing the house?
Yeah, you're going to want to do it before. And again, if you're using our swell buyer representation agreement, which you should be, it's in there. It gives you your options of, okay, well, do you want to look at houses where, you know, the commission isn't being offered, you know, or if you do. So that way you have those discussions before with your client, and then you're going to reach out. But like we said earlier on this call, you know, the listing agent may not show the seller's hand. So then, you know, it could be a situation then where you show it, your buyer wants to write on it, and then you find out later they're not offering any compensation. And that's where you'd have to go through what Hillary was proposing, where you raise the price. Hopefully you're able to roll in your commission, and then it's dependent on the appraisal coming in at value. So again, it's just
gambling on getting paid.
Yeah, there's just so much fluidity, and it's just part of it.
Yeah.
So either way, we're taking the risk to show a house that probably at the end they say, you know, my seller is not willing to do any concession. So, and just okay, thank you so much. Bye bye. See you later.
Yeah.
You could be potentially, and again, if your buyer, it really depends on the relationship you have with your buyer. Now, again, I know this is being recorded, so I'm not going to go into great detail. But if it's a lead that you found on Zillow, okay, well then they may not be that loyal to you. You know what I mean? But if it's your sister's nephew or whatever, okay, well then they might be more inclined. Or if they've been a client of yours for a little bit, they may be, hopefully they're more inclined to say, well, gee, we know you don't work for free. So those are those situations they're going to come up, you know. So again, you just have to be as proactive and be as prepared in the beginning as you can be, so that then if it's basically option A, option B, option E, option C, so to speak, and you know which one to pursue.
Okay.
And I would still write the offer and send over the offer of compensation. I would still show the house, because, you know, that agent, you're just relying completely on that agent to take. Well, that seller hasn't seen your offer yet, right?
Right, but also, you know, you could have, and again, like Barry said, have this conversation with your buyer up front. Okay, I know you don't want to see any houses where the seller's not offering any, but there might be a situation where if it makes sense appraisal wise, to go up in price so that I can get paid and you still get the house you want, you know. But we'll cross that bridge.
And more importantly, you get representation. So it's important that we get paid. It's important that they get the house they want. But again, the reason they're paying you is for representation, because it's not good for them to be unrepresented dealing with someone that is being represented. And that's what we have to keep coming back to. Okay. Which again is being prepared, thinking through the different scenarios. Well, if they ask me this, what am I going to say? And I'm telling you, the more you do it, the more fluid, the more smooth it'll get. And then you'll believe it. And they'll know that you believe it and you're firm with it, and you'll be better for it in the end. Anyone else? Okay. Well,
I
Julie
guess we're
turns
good.
into a pumpkin at an hour, so we need to really get off this.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I know, right?
so this has been recorded. We'll send this. Julie, will you email this out to everyone?
Yeah,
Please?
once I get once it's sent to me, I
Okay.
will. Maybe in the
Okay.
next day or two at
Okay.
most, hopefully.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. And if y'all have questions, if you're with Swell Realty, text Julie. Swell Real Estate, text me. We'll try to answer them to the best of our abilities. And hey, buckle up. Here we go. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Thank
All
you
right.
guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Appreciate it.